A masterclass from Catherine, a disaster class from Meghan and Harry, and could Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, be up for a major new role? We have another fascinating show for you. Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential. I'm Jo Elvin, and joining me on the show this week is the Daily Mail's Royal Editor, Rebecca English, the Mail on Sunday's Editor-at-Large, Charlotte Griffiths, and the Daily Mail's Diary Editor, Richard Eden. Now, a reminder, if you don't already, please do subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals channel. It is free, and it means you won't miss any of our new episodes of this or our other fabulous shows like Reading the Royals with our very own Richard. Click that button now. It's the bell if you're watching on TV. I promise you won't regret it. Right, now, before I come to the panel, let's hear from the Princess of Wales.
I had a small taste of what you've gone through. The resilience to keep coming back and being as positive as you are. And it does make me appreciate the small things in life too. Everyone said after this treatment, you have to be careful with you're okay. Stay strong, okay? Yeah, exactly. Just when you start to feel a bit better off back of the two treatments, you're then like, I mean, today I feel great.
That's right. Catherine has confirmed that she is in remission from cancer as she carried out her first solo engagement in more than a year. Rebecca, what a moment. Very moving and so important. What can you tell us about it?
Really joyous start of the year to it, isn't it? I was told about a day before that she was planning to do this, but they wanted to do it amid quite a kind of security blackout because the Royal Marsden Hospital where she was going is still very much a working hospital. But we had a small media contingency down there, and she wanted to go back to the hospital, which we've now had confirmed was where she has been having her treatment over the past year, to show sympathy and support for fellow patients who are going through the treatment when she has fortunately got to the end of hers, and also to thank the staff, as that she said later, that have walked quietly by her and William's side throughout what's been a really difficult year. And I think where she is so brilliant at these things is she didn't go into the hospital and say, look, this is my story, this is about me. She wanted to hear about other people, and then would let the odd little kind of tidbit of information slip about, yes, I remember that. I mean, she was very open. She talked about having a port inserted into her chest to have the chemotherapy treatment taken into her body. I mean, that's incredibly open, but she did it in a way that was almost kind of quite casual. Right? You know, she wanted to make it about them, not about her. And then later we got a statement from her confirming for the first time that she was now officially in remission from the disease. I mean, it's important to stress that's not the same as being cancer-free, because doctors will never say that, because of course it is a particularly virulent disease that can come back, but it's another incredibly important and incredibly positive milestone for her. It
really is. It's such great news, but I suppose a lot of people will be keen to see more of Catherine, but we're not quite back to business as usual, are we?
No, and I think, as I said in the programme the other week about the feature I wrote about her birthday, you know, people I spoke to were very keen to stress that while we will see her more than we have in the past 12 months, there is no great reset button being sent, you know, in January. This is all about a very slow and measured return. Her recovery is still ongoing, both mentally as well as physically, given what she's been through. But, you know, this week was very much about her wanting to tell a little bit more about what she'd been through, but highlight the incredible people that had made this last year that little bit more bearable for her.
Absolutely. Richard, what are your thoughts on how Catherine has managed this comeback?
Yeah, I mean, how fitting that her first engagement should be at the hospital where she was treated, that's been central to her recovery. And I think that sort of sets the pattern for the engagements we're going to see, that yes, there may be fewer of them this year, but they'll be more meaningful to her. So I would fully expect, you know, engagements to be connected to the early years, which is that great passion of hers, and other things. So yes, maybe fewer, but very much more meaningful.
Charlotte, her interactions with the patients, I think, were perhaps also a sign of how useful she really is to the family. What do you think?
Yeah, they must be so relieved to have her back, because I thought it was just a real masterclass in how to be a royal at these engagements. And I was really reminded of the fact that she learnt, of course, while the last queen, the late queen, was still alive. So she learnt from the master. And picking up on what you were saying, Rebecca, she was so good at kind of absorbing the odd compliment, taking a compliment, but then not making it all about herself, not being a victim, and deflecting the question back, because she was genuinely interested to hear about the cancer patients and what they were going through. And the Queen famously used to do that. She was very, very good at deflecting questions about herself and not making it, all about the Catherine show. It was about the people she came to see, and she was just brilliant at it. And I've really missed that, actually.
Well, long may it continue. We'll see what's next for Catherine. But we're sticking with William and Catherine for now, to a popular piece in the Mail Online this week that looked at how they and their children coordinate their outfits to show a united front. Now, Rebecca, has this occurred to you before? What did you think of this?
It has occurred to me, and actually it particularly occurred to me at Christmas, because it wasn't just William or Catherine and Charlotte, as you'll often see. It was the whole family. So Catherine was wearing a kind of a dark-coloured coat with a blue and green tartan scarf. Charlotte had a tartan coat on. Even George and Louis had matching blue and green ties, and William had a blue tie as well. And I think it kind of projects like you say, a feeling of unity and a feeling that they are all as one. And I don't think she overdoes it, which I think is great. I mean, I think if they were wearing matching dresses, it could look a little bit twee. But I think complementing the outfits is okay.
Do you think it's possible that for any given photo opportunity could be the Christmas card that year, if they've just all sort of like matchy, that just increases your odds of that, maybe?
Well, do you remember years ago? That when the Duke and Duchess of York were working roles, they would always
always
dress Beatrice and Eugenie the same same outfits. I have to say, I'm not personally a big fan of that.
I like that. I thought that was sweet. Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't know. There wasn't so much for me. But
do you and your family coordinate, Charlotte?
I can never get my kids to match outfits. I'm dying to go to Trotters, and I think Catherine does shop at Trotters. You have to look it up, because the outfits are just perfect. Trotters. I'm dying to get my kids to be in matching Trotters. I don't have the same control over my family that Catherine does. My husband would never wear a tie I'd asked him to wear. I just would refuse.
I think as a father, I'd struggle to get my daughters to wear anything I chose.
Does any of the children's outfits leap out at you?
I did like the tartan thing, and it was really subtly done. And I love the fact that their little ties matched up, the boys' ties matched up. I thought it was really sweet. But she does have that classic English look. It's so timeless. And I think that's really clever, because if there was a Christmas card, it won't age too badly in the years to come.
Well, speaking of, Richard, the children always look smart, but they certainly look more relaxed than if you can remember what Princes Harry and William used to look like back in the day.
I don't know. I think William and Catherine, they make a point of dressing the children in a very traditional, regal way, I would say, which is quite unusual these days. But then, as you say, with William and Harry, when they were boys, it was even more formal. I remember seeing one photograph of they're on holiday in Balmoral, and they were both wearing shirt and ties.
Right.
Which, to be fair, I'm sure was because they knew there was a photo call that day. But it did give quite an unusual kind of holiday vibe.
The thing I remember is the sailor suits. Do you remember little boys' sailor suits with the little breeches and the collar?
Oh,
that was just the 80s.
Great.
I had that. I'm the same age as Harry. I used to wear those little sailor suits in the 80s.
Yeah, and that's that royal tradition of sailor suits.
Yeah, but I just think it's so funny when they make the children wear those brass double-breasted blazers with little brass buttons, like they're tiny 80-year-olds. It's such a funny look. I think Louis done that once or twice.
Oh.
But I think we know, and when we see that kind of the lovely footage and the photographs in private, the minute they get away, the T-shirts are on the shorts, the kicked out old trainers. So at home they live, very normal lives and wear very normal clothes you'd expect of children their age.
I've read, there's the interior designer Nicky Haslam, who's become a bit of a sort of style arbiter. He's been very rude about William and Catherine dressing their children in a sort of coordinated way.
Is it one of his things that are common?
Yeah, he sort of listed it on his tea towel of things that are common, but he's sort of missing the point that...
But he also says loving your parents is common.
Yes. If you're the future king and queen, you can't be common, so that he's sort of missing the point.
Well, Catherine is famously posher than the Queen, as they always used to say.
Who is?
Catherine. She speaks more formally than the Queen sometimes.
Oh, I always learn something on this show. Goodness me. Well, Rebecca, speaking of sort of keeping it casual, we had Catherine in a hospital, but we had William in a pub. What was that all about?
I mean, to be fair, he went to the pub once and had a pint of cider, so I don't think we have to worry about him too much yet. But he was in...
It's as remarkable as seeing a royal in a Pizza Express, if you ask me.
It wasn't the Prince of Wales pub.
No, although I do know, because my cousin used to drink in there, he used to drink in the Duke of Cambridge after he played football at Battersea Park. In the Duke of... Yeah,
that would have been a great picture for the paper, wouldn't it? Him coming out of the Duke of Cambridge.
Everyone missed a trick there.
I was sworn to secrecy over that. But no, he was in a Wetherspoons in Birmingham. Now, I think I got a lot of questions online about this yesterday. I described it as being a bit of a cultural icon, the spoons, and a lot of people.
My daughter's favourite. You can get a very cheap G&T in there.
Yeah, and people from the US. Well, how would you describe this? And I was like, it's a bit difficult to say, but I suppose it's like if you had a Cheers bar in every high street. In the United States, and it's the booze is cheap, the food is pretty cheap, but they also pop up in unexpected
There's a regulation
places.
old man in the back of the
I should say that Wetherspoons
Yeah.
these days there are some quite posh ones actually.
Well, I was trying to say
people
that they take over unwanted buildings like banks and cinemas, even swimming pools, so they're kind of part of the community. So everyone was quite excited when he popped up in the Spoons, but he was in Birmingham to be announced as a new patron of the College of Paramedics, and he'd asked whether he could meet some Aston Villa fans. Aston Villa is his big passion, the football team he supports, and they're from Birmingham. And they were playing an away match that night, so the Palace spoke to the club and said, "So look, would you like to get a group of fans? You'll meet him in the pub for a pint to have a chat about it." And he bought a round of 8, put his hand in his pocket and had a good old chinwag with him for half an hour before he jumped on the train back to London.
Oh,
so
what a wholesome evening.
Unexpected surprise, but a really good one.
And what do you think about, should we curb our expectations about seeing William and Catherine doing any dual public appearances?
Interesting question. I mean, obviously, one thing I should have mentioned earlier is that this week they were also announced as new joint patrons of the Royal Marsden. William's already president of the Royal Marsden, following in the footsteps of his late mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. But now, because of her treatment there and her link to the hospital, Catherine is joining him as a joint patron too. So I think if we saw engagements like the Royal Marsden, we would see them together. But I mean, I just think as a couple that they've never really felt the need to do everything together. They both have officially very separate interests in terms of her with the early years, him with the environment. Sometimes those paths cross on things like mental health, but I still think we'll see her striking out and doing her own engagements in the interests that particularly concern her.
Well, speaking of double acts, Richard, you had an interesting story in today's paper about fundraising that might raise a few eyebrows.
Well, this was just the latest figures for Earthshot, which is the prize that William created. Very positive prize. The idea was, instead of just moaning about the environment and how everything's getting worse, he thought, what can I actually do to help? And came up with a prize, series of prizes, big money ones, that companies can win if they come up with some sort of innovative idea to help the environment. And it's come up with some really interesting ideas so far, and it seems to have caught the imagination of business people. So this year they raised, I think it was about 22 million, something like that, so a lot of money. But also, very interestingly, they attracted more donations from the American Friends of the Royal Foundation than Harry and Meghan managed to attract for their entire Archewell Foundation.
Right.
So, given that Harry and Meghan are based in America, it would seem a bit of a paradox, really.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, obviously, Charlotte, it's all money going to good causes, but you can't help but wonder if it will rankle with Harry and Meghan, that little comparison.
Definitely. There's no doubt that they're competitive, of course, these brothers. And it's a real case of the tortoise and the hare, I think, because William's just been quite low-key, not made a big fuss, in the background, just been building Earthshot. It's getting better and better. It's getting more and more attention. And yeah, I'm afraid to say, I think his brother's going to be a little bit jealous about this money that hasn't gone to his charity.
To be fair, I should add that we haven't had the figures for last year from Archewell, so we were comparing it with the previous year. So for all we know, they've had a gold rush of money coming into it, but we'll wait with interest to see.
Never know, we shall see, and we will have more on the comparisons between the Waleses and the Sussexes in just a moment. Before then, though, some of your comments, we love them. We had a couple of questions about Princess Anne and her great niece, Princess Charlotte, like this one from Janice Percy, who asks, I keep seeing posts on Facebook that say Princess Anne has passed her Princess Royal title on to Princess Charlotte. I didn't think that the title could be passed on until the death of the current princess holding the title. What is the protocol on this procedure? Thank you. Now, we did answer a similar question in our Q&A episode at Christmas time, but if you missed that, Rebecca, tell us all over again. What can you tell us?
Sounds like Facebook may have lost their fact checkers already.
Say no more.
So look, it is traditional that the title of Princess Royal goes to the eldest daughter of the reigning monarch, hence why Queen Elizabeth gave the title to Princess Anne. We would expect Princess Charlotte to get it, but they don't tend to kind of hand titles over like that in a lifetime because it's something they carry for life. So.
And it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, it wouldn't be up to Princess Anne in any case.
No, it would be up to the king or Prince William when he becomes king. So I would fully expect that to happen with Princess Charlotte, unless, for example, she decided she didn't want to be a working royal at all, but I can't see that happening. But I think we've just got to wait a few years, and Anne will continue to do the job magnificently, and I'm sure Charlotte will in due course as well.
Indeed. Well, I hope that clears that up for you, Janice. Be wary of trusting those Facebook posts, especially when you've got Palace Confidential. It's all you need to answer all your royal queries. Now, after Andrea's revelation that she dreamt about the Palace Confidential team, PT confessed to doing the same, writing, "Yes, Jo, others dream about the Palace team. I dreamed about Rebecca once. Can't remember the context, but it happened."
That was a nightmare, not a dream.
I think PT's being very coy and knows exactly what he or she dreamed and won't tell us. Well, sticking with Palace at bedtime, we also had lots of comments from those who apparently use Palace Confidential to get to sleep. Teresa from New York writes, "Dearest Jo and panel, I must fess up, I too fell asleep to your programme over the holidays. As an avid fan, I think your familiar voices lulled me into dreamland by providing comfort to me after the exhaustion of the holidays." Okay, well that's a good spin. Please take this feedback as the high compliment it is, as it shows what a personal connection you create with your many fans across the world. Oh, that is actually really lovely. Now, Gabby Gatto is also in the same boat. "Laughed out loud, can't believe I'm not the only one that listens to these to go to sleep. I end up playing the video 3 to 4 times to actually hear the entire programme. Love you guys. Kiss, kiss." While Smoking Barn wrote, "I too listen to you all to go to sleep." God, this is actually starting to give me a complex. In my defence, I watch you more than once, and so I don't miss anything. I think it is the tone of y'all speaking that helps me calm down and fall asleep. No shade at all. But then, thank goodness for some balance, we had plenty who said they couldn't imagine sleeping to us, like Patsy, who wrote, "Your show does not put me to sleep, even the 4-hour show," which I did watch. Thank you, Patsy. And if you at home missed the 4-hour episode, go and check it out, even if you want to sleep to it or not. Now, if you can stay awake long enough, if you're still here with us, please do keep those comments coming in. Now, back to the panel, and last week we were discussing Meghan Markle's new TV show, what it might contain, and whether any royal noses might be put out of joint. Charlotte, tell us what happened.
So what happened was, well, we were all expecting Meghan's Netflix cookery show, and it's been highly, highly anticipated. And of course, she released the advert via her Instagram. And then the wildfires very sadly spread through LA.
Yeah.
And she issued a statement via Netflix saying she's postponing it. And that's what's happening. But of course, as always with Meghan Markle, there has now been a backlash. You know, I have to say, she's a bit damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. Some people are saying, is she courting more publicity? Because of course now we're talking about the show again. Some people are saying, you know, who cares? There are much bigger issues in your cookery show. It seems like a sensible decision from Netflix, and apparently it is them that make the final decision rather than Meghan, because of course the show is all set in LA in these perfect kitchens and the perfect garden. It would have been very, very jarring to see that in the wake of the fact that so many people have lost their homes and they're just rubble now.
I mean, Richard, what do you think? I know you've written about this for Mail Plus this week. What have you said?
I mean, I think Meghan's decision to postpone this programme really does lay bare her contempt for the royal family. And I'll tell you why, because, you know, she said apparently People magazine had her saying that she didn't think twice about cancelling this programme after the terrible wildfires. Well, you might remember, and as lots of people have pointed out to me since that was announced, that Meghan certainly, you know, she may have thought twice, but she went ahead with the Oprah Winfrey interview when Prince Philip was seriously ill. He was in hospital, And then they decided to go ahead with the programme. Obviously caused heartache for everyone in the royal family. And Prince Philip died 4 weeks later. And we know they went ahead with everything else, like the Netflix series when the Queen was in failing health. Harry announced his memoirs as well when it was obvious that Queen Elizabeth was increasingly frail. So I'm sorry, people have been quite cynical about this, sudden compassion.
And it's not the only time, is it, though, that their plans have been thwarted by major events?
No, I mean, there does seem to be something of a sort of curse of Meghan, because let's be honest, when they moved to LA, they were hoping that would be, or when they moved to North America, it would be the start of their career. And then what happened? You had lockdowns and the pandemic, and it ended up that they couldn't launch that show business career that they wanted to for some years, and it really put them back. So again, it's very unfortunate timing. And I have to say as well, I mean, think what Meghan's done. She's just delayed this programme by a couple of months. But what really will be different in March? I mean, you're going to have vast areas of LA with people still homeless. Really, will there be a sort of appetite for this, luxury programme, showing off your fancy kitchen to your friends? I don't know.
And is it true, what's going to happen with the podcast as well that was supposed to come in the wake of the cookery show?
Well, that was interesting, because I remember being given the story before that the podcast, so she announced, so let's rewind a bit. So they had a very lucrative deal with the audio giant Spotify. And that ended, I have to say, rather acrimoniously. You might remember one of the executives calling them something very rude and calling them grifters.
And his invitation to appear on Palace Confidential is still very much open.
Yeah. So anyway, Meghan was clearly keen to announce a replacement for that deal. So after some months, she did announce, with great fanfare, a new deal. I think it was Lemonada was the company. It was a very small podcast company. But then what I was told was it wouldn't be released until the podcast wouldn't start until after her series for Netflix.
Right.
So now that's even later, although, we don't know, for all we know, they might choose to bring that forward, but I very much doubt it. I think everything's on hold.
I'm loving this history lesson because I'd forgotten so much of this, but what's the content of that podcast going to be, do you know?
She hasn't said, but
Right.
I think she wanted to continue with a theme of archetypes where, it was feminist issues, and it was very much her podcast rather than the one that perhaps Spotify had expected with her and Harry.
Really can't wait. Now, on a serious note, though, we know that we have a lot of viewers in California, and we really do send our heartfelt best to all of those affected by the fires. I don't know about you, I've got friends there who's like coping with just unbelievable scenes, so we're really sending love to you all. Now, Rebecca, among those out and about with the first responders, did happen to be the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
They popped up on Friday with a World Kitchen Organisation, which is a charity which, to be fair, they worked with in the past, which was helping with disaster relief, because obviously people have not just, have lost their homes, they've lost everything in it, they're trying to find hotel rooms, they've got no way to feed themselves, so they were helping with that. There's a lot of talk online about whether they aim to be seen there, whether they knew the cameras were going to be there or not. The truth is, I don't know the truth of that. I mean, I probably personally wouldn't knock them for wanting to go and help out. I think if something had happened in my hometown here in London, you would want to get involved in some way.
This puts you very much at odds with the actress Justine Bateman, who was less impressed and tweeted that Meghan Markle and Harry are no better than ambulance chasers. What a repulsive photo op they achieved. They are touring the damage, ? Are they politicians now?
Well, I think that's the difference, Jo.
Yeah, they don't live here. They are tourists, disaster tourists. I mean, that is punchy beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the difference. That's what I was going to go on to say, is that photographs suddenly later appeared of them with the local mayor touring some of the devastation zone and going around and seeing these houses that had been burnt to the ground. That has attracted a lot of ire, and that I understand, because people haven't been able to go back to their homes yet to see whether there's anything left to salvage of their lives. And to see Harry and Meghan effectively been given a tour of the area, I think is stuck in a lot of people's craw, and I think that is very understandable.
I mean, the thing that chimes with me is that they're not politicians. They're not the royal family, because they don't want to be working royals. I mean, so Charlotte, is this Justine's assessment? Is that harsh but fair? Well off the money? What do you think?
I think it's harsh but fair because, as you say, they're not politicians. What are they doing there? I get that Meghan was born and raised in LA, and it's a place close to her heart, but there are loads of celebrities in LA. Of course, it's, a celebrity hotspot. Were there lots of other celebrities? There was the odd one. And the other thing is that what their power is drawing attention to issues. And there could not be more attention, rightly, on this LA wildfire. So it's not like we needed them to draw attention to a subtle issue to do with health or mental health. So it felt like they were drawing attention, I'm afraid, to themselves. And there's one picture of Meghan looking right at a camera, and I did think, she can't help the fact that she's very aware of the cameras and the camera crew around her. I don't know, I think it is harsh but fair, I'm afraid.
Richard, what do you think? Do you think it would have been better if their president had come out later, or if they hadn't done what they did? I don't know. What do you think?
Let's be honest, if they wanted to help in an anonymous way, they could, either helping from home, giving money or giving support, or just turn up. But they went with the governor of California, didn't they, Gavin Newsom? I saw, images of them with him. So obviously, if you turn up to pose for photographs with him, that's what's going to happen. I mean, look, these things are so sensitive. We saw it in Spain when the royal family, the king and queen, went to Valencia, the scene of the floods that had been there, and unfortunately, they had to go with politicians. And so then people were very angry towards the politicians. And they got caught up in that. There was actually like mud thrown and stuff. So that showed the sensitivities. And here we've seen it where probably William and Catherine wanted to go to the scenes of the riot after the murders of the children in Southport. But, they would have been advised, wait till things have cleared up, wait till tensions have died down. And we saw William and Catherine go later to meet the families of the victims. So it needs to be done very sensitively.
I suppose some people, Rebecca, will be saying, well, why is this any different to something happening in the UK and the royals touring the scene?
It's a fair question, but I think there's a huge distinction, and the distinction is that the royal family are a part of our national life. They have a role to play in times of good and in times of bad. And in times of bad, we expect them to be there showing their support. The difference, I think, here is that they do this on the advice of government. They're specifically invited to go along to these things. And they have advisors who are constantly speaking to government officials and Whitehall officials behind the scenes. So they're very careful to pick their timing. I mean, there was criticism of them last year when some people were saying, why didn't they rush up to Southport? The reason why they didn't is because they knew that was the last thing anyone there needed. Bringing attention to families in a community that was grieving, the police and the emergency services are still struggling to contain a very volatile situation. So they did not listen to the public calls for it, and they waited until the appropriate time, and I think it was all the more powerful for doing that. I think people with Harry and Meghan are saying, well, these people don't occupy an official position in our national or even local life. So what right do they have to be given guided tours of the devastation? And I can understand, as I say, why that sticks in people's craw. I really do.
I'm sure we will be hearing viewers' comments on that issue presently. Now, hear that? Well, it is time to celebrate the less heralded members of the firm. And this week, our unsung hero is Sophie, Super Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. Rebecca, what is she up to? She's got a big birthday coming up.
Unbelievably, she's going to be turning 60 on Monday, and I think she looks fantastic.
She doesn't
at the
look
moment.
60.
No, I mean, she looks amazing. I've been working on a big profile of her for a few months now to mark the occasion, which will hopefully you'll be able to read in the Daily Mail in the next few days.
Oh, you don't sound confident there.
Well, the editor's
like
got to see it yet, so let's see what he says. But
Sure,
I've been
he'll love it.
speaking to people who've worked alongside her for decades, as well as friends, to kind of paint a bigger picture of who she is and what importance she will continue to play in the royal family in the decades to come. And I think what's quite interesting is friends are saying, funny enough, she's not really doing anything massively different to what she's done under the radar for so many years, but they, for one, are really glad to have the chance to sing her praises because they know she would never do it for herself. You know, she's a really steady pair of hands when it comes to the monarchy, and, you know, she knows, I suppose she knows her place in the pecking order, and that, you know, you've got the King and the Queen leading it, you've got a lot of eyes on the Prince and Princesses of Wales, but you also need people like Sophie, like Princess Anne, like Prince Edward, like the Gloucesters and the Kents, who go out and do that bread and butter royal duties, shaking hands, cutting ribbons, going to community centres, thanking volunteers. But then she has this portfolio of work that's really powerful, that's her own idea, which is going out and working on behalf of victims of sexual violence during conflict.
Yeah.
So she's not afraid to shirk the big global issues as well. I think she's pretty marvellous.
It's interesting, isn't it? There's a report in the Sunday Times, Charlotte, that suggested that William will want to use Sophie when he becomes king eventually. It's hard to see, he'd want to use her more, and it's hard to see that being an unpopular move, isn't it?
No, I mean, she's just a brilliant, as you say, bread and butter royal, and he's not going to want to throw that away. I mean, she's doing the really tricky subjects, as you say, which I've always really liked about Sophie, and she will do pretty much anything that's asked of her. You know, she'll do the unglamorous stuff. So if he threw that away, he'd be absolutely mad in the quest for a slimmed down monarchy. I don't think he'd want to lose Sophie.
And what about Richard? Because you're always banging the drum for Princesses Eugenie and Beatrice to do more, but there's a suggestion as well that when William is king, he might use Sophie and Edward's children more as working royals.
I really hope that's the case. I'd love to see the cousins of Prince William helping him when he does become king, in the same way that Queen Elizabeth relied so much on her loyal cousins. That would be great. But I have to say there's no great sign of that. So I think Sophie and Edward are both keen for their children to pursue non-royal careers, if that's what they want to do. And
I was going to say that the children, do they get any say? Do they get to put their hand up and say, use me more?
Well, as an example, Lady Louise Windsor has had the option of styling herself Princess Louise since she turned 18, and she's chosen not to do that. So that says a lot. I think she's in her final year at university. But I would expect her to take a job. But look, who knows? Hopefully William won't become king for a long while.
Yeah.
And by that point, maybe she'd be a great addition to the working royals. And fingers crossed.
It's an interesting one. Well, we will have more coming up on Sophie on the Daily Mail Royals channel in a couple of days. And that's, obviously it's another reason to subscribe if you don't already. That way you won't miss it. Well, sticking with Sophie, we'll be marking her birthday with one of our world-famous montages, just like last week's with Catherine. We're keeping it simple. So as she turns 60, here are 60 of our favourite photos of the Duchess of Edinburgh. Happy birthday to Sophie. Look out for Rebecca's special report on her next week. It's happening, isn't it? Do you promise?
I hope so.
Another chance to see our special Q&A show after this. Click here for that. Thank you to Rebecca, Charlotte, Richard, and to you, of course, for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.